We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world. We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Lazarus Planet, We Once Were Gods, Issue 1. This is a one-shot that ties into both the Lazarus Planet miniseries and the Revenge of the Gods miniseries. And it came out in 2023 from DC Comics. The first story is called Hunger Pains, script and art by Francis Manapul, letters by AndWorld Design, assistant editor Gillian Grant, edited by Paul Kaminsky. A couple people find this random naked dude alive on the water, and the water is green because of the Lazarus eruption. He wakes up and is incredibly strong and seems to have some powers, and the anti-superhero off-the-grid guy immediately wants to shoot him, but Aquaman steps in, and we learn that this guy's actually just really hungry and confused because he used to be one of the people from the deep, from the trenches. For those of you that don't know, the trenches were filled with a bunch of mutated Atlanteans, and now apparently they're no longer mutated, so Aquaman's got to deal with that. And that's going to be continued at some point in some other storyline. Then we've got a Martian Manhunter story called Song of Pain, written by Dan Waters, art by Max Dunbar, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Troy Pateri, edited by Dave Walgos. And this spends a lot of time talking about this guy named Raphael, who has some sort of empathy powers and can take people's pain away, and he tries to take away all the pain of Metropolis, and accidentally encounters the memory of Doomsday, and apparently that's enough to resurrect Doomsday within, and he starts mutating, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. When Martian Manhunter tries to take the pain away, he starts getting affected too, and somebody's gonna have to make a sacrifice. This was stupid. The art's not very good either. The art on the Aquaman story I didn't much care for. It looked very rushed at times, but it was acceptable. It was okay. It was just average. But the art in Songs of Pain, I'm not familiar with Max Dunbar, but I'm not a big fan of what I saw here. The proportions don't look quite right. Martian Manhunter's face looks weird, everybody's eyes look weird, and the story itself didn't make a whole lot of sense to begin with. So I didn't care for it. It was supposed to be this touching story of sacrifice. I just didn't like it at all. Then we get to the ones that relate more to the Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods stories. Now, I have already read the Revenge of the Gods stories, and they all reference this as being very, very important to it. And you do need to read this for some context. Unfortunately, that context is rather thin. So there's Song of the Dead, which is a Wonder Woman story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Jack Herbert. Alex Guimarães was the colorist, Pat Brousseau on letters, Chris Rosa, associate editor, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. Wonder Woman's teaching some really fat lady named Bia to fight with a sword for some reason, and then Bia gets dragged under the water by Theseus and a bunch of undead, and Wonder Woman has to fight him off, and then some other Amazonians show up and kill the zombies, but the threat is not over. It really kind of alludes to what happened at Themyscira, but it doesn't really build it up quite as well as it could have. You never see Hades, it's just alluding to it. It was okay. I'm not sure I understand why this really heavy set lady is a soldier of Themyscira and seems to be holding her own with Wonder Woman and Nubia, but I guess that's just something we have to deal with. Also, Nubia looks a lot better in this issue than she does in Revenge of the Gods. She doesn't look as thick. She looks a little bit more athletic. Finally, there's The Price of Eternity, which is a Mary Marvel story written by Josie Campbell, art by Caitlin Yarsky, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Clayton Cowles, assistant editor Gillian Grant, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. Now, Mary seeks Black Adam's help, but she only gets his protege, Malik, and they go to the Rock of Eternity to try and free Billy, and that kind of backfires in their face, and then MacGuffin happens, and he's free, and everybody hugs. It's dumb. It doesn't really explain why the gods are doing what they're doing. By alluding to this issue as being pivotal, it really only explains the wizard's part in the story. It doesn't actually explain the motivation of the gods. They're just angry. It doesn't explain how Zeus died. It just sort of happened somewhere. I don't know. It wasn't in any of the storyline, because for Revenge of the Gods, you need to read this, you need to read the Revenge of the Gods 4-part miniseries, and you need to read 2 issues of Wonder Wonder Woman. If something happened before in those issues of Wonder Woman, I didn't see it because they didn't tell me I needed to read it. They didn't even tell me I needed to read the Wonder Woman issues. They implied it was a standalone miniseries, but you absolutely had to read the Wonder Woman issues for any context at all, for what was going on with Themyscira specifically. The Wonder Woman story was probably the best written and probably had the best art. The Mary Marvel story was convoluted at best, made almost no sense, because the joy was in her heart the whole time. It was stupid, and the art is garbage. It looks very much like something I would see at an indie book that was just a happy, feel-good kid's adventure that was really just a knockoff of Stranger Things. That's the impression I got. And what have they done to Hoppy? Come on. Way to neuter him. Overall, this was a pretty forgettable issue. The Aquaman story sounds like it might be interesting later on in another miniseries or ongoing. I don't know. The Martian Manhunter story was forgettable at best and tried a little too hard with what little it had to work with. Probably could have been a more interesting story if they had gone about it differently, but just by thinking about Doomsday, you might be coming. Oh, shush. That's just silly. So this was a giant waste of $5. The cover is pretty good though, and it does kind of hint at what you could expect. And it was nice to see Captain Marvel return to the main DC universe, but I'm just not impressed with this at all. This was a big miss for me. I would say grab it out of a dollar bin if you really want to read Revenge of the Gods. Definitely don't pay anywhere near $5 for it if you want it. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, Issue 1. This is a mini-series from DC Comics in 2023, and it ties into the Lazarus Planet mini-series, written by G. Willow Wilson, art by Cian Tormey, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Pat Brousseau, cover by Gilliam March, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer, group editor Paul Kaminsky. Cover's okay. Captain Marvel barely appears in this. So we start off with a race swapped Apollo with cornrows for some reason, and he's been shooting people with arrows, and he hits Billy Batson, and that's pretty much all we see of Billy. And we get the impression that the gods have returned to various other locations as well, and this seems to be led by Hera, who may have killed Zeus. He's just laying on the floor there, so I don't know if he just had a sudden nap attack or if he's actually dead. But this ties into Lazarus Planet, We Once Were Gods, issue 1, which is a one-shot, which apparently you do have to read before this miniseries, so be aware of that. So Hera's plans are definitely to get revenge on the humans. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman, not Donna Troy, Wonder Girl, and Cheetah are hanging out with some lady who's not identified, and they have a mopey conversation about maybe doing something, and Wonder Woman goes off to try and talk sense into Hera. Now, some guy drops into a river and pulls up a golden hand with no real indication what that is, except it's a hand of a god. And we do get some updates on what's going on with Hippolyta. And then we jump over to the backup story called The Stranger, written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, pencils by Aletha Martinez, inks by Mark Morales and John Livesey, colors by Alex Gamarez, letters by Becca Carey, assistant editor was Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. And this is about Themyscira and the really dark-skinned Greek women that live there, and they find two men arriving on their shores who are, of course, YouTube live streamers, and you can tell that they have a lot of understanding of how live streamers work because these people are jerks, even though they say smash like, hit the bell, and be sure to give us a big thumbs up. Smashing the like and giving a big thumbs up are basically the same thing, so it shows your lack of basic understanding of how streaming works. It's kind of sad, really, because, I mean, pretty much everybody says hit the like button, share it on your social media, and subscribe if you haven't. So I don't know how you guys missed that one, but, you know, lack of effort seems to be the theme over at DC these days. This story was stupid. The guy that had the god hand in the previous main story is in this one, and some of the people in here have really insanely poofy hair. Nubia's hair is ridiculously gigantic. It's bizarre and distracting at times. The art in this one, it really looks like there's a lot of posed action figures being the models for this. this, but there's some decent art at least. It's not horrible, but it's not great. Action shots seem to be a big struggle here because the one guy running just looks weird. He's trying to run with his camera and it looks like a really distorted toy, like he's trying to keep from pooping himself while running, and it's really badly drawn. But some of the other shots don't look too bad. The backgrounds look really good. It's just faces seem to be an issue and action shots. So I don't think it's really ready for prime time. But the art in the backup story is shockingly better than the art in the main story, which really at times looks rushed, and also the perspective shots on that one are really flat and boring too. Overall, the story is okay. It's just not that interesting, and it seems to be rather inspired by War of the Gods, but I just really had a hard time connecting with this one. It was just not that interesting. It's a bit convoluted, and the whole book is a lot of rah-rah girl power, so I just wasn't really interested in it. There's an incredible amount of race swapping, which seems highly unnecessary and pointless, so I don't really care about that too much. It just came off as a bit too PC. I'm not going to recommend it unless you find it real cheap. If you didn't pull this out of a dollar bin, it's probably not worth it. We'll see how issue 2 does, but so far I'm very unimpressed. The art's at best mediocre. The backup story has better art than the main story with way more detailing, especially on backgrounds. The backgrounds look great in the backup story. Overall, there's just too much here that really didn't jump out as being anything memorable or anything I'd want to seek out. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Wonder Woman issue 797. This is the 5th series from DC Comics, which is part of the Rebirth line, before they return to the regular numbering. This issue is part 1 of The Reckoning, written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, art by Amin K. Naulpan, colors by Tamara Bonvillain, letters by Pat Brousseau. I have cover A by Yannick Paquette and Dave McCaig. Assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer. Group editor Paul Kaminsky. This picks up where Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods issue 1 left off. Unless you've read that story, this issue is going to make almost no sense whatsoever. There are mild recaps, but not enough to really give you the context of what's actually happening here. And it's pretty annoying, because this probably should have been issue 2 of that series. So Hera has Diana tied with the lasso of truth on the Promethean cliffs, and she's being watched by a Cyclops. When Hecate shows up to help Diana, Diana refuses her help, assuming that it's a trap of some kind, and the mysterious stranger that we met in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods issue 1 is back, this time a lot more interactive, and he is trying to help her escape the hordes of the undead and free her and help her escape and all that. There's also a talking squirrel, because why not? You gotta have something cutesy in there. Then she makes her way back to Themyscira, but she is needed in Man's World, and Queen Nubia, whose hair is gigantic for some reason, basically tells her to take off and we'll handle this. And we're left with an ending that implies some serious danger for Themyscira and Wonder Woman going to take revenge on the gods, to quote it. And this continues in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods issue 2. So they're jumping back and forth to try and cross-promote and force you to buy their other books. There is a backup story with Mary Marvel called The Champion's Heart, and this is part 1 by Josie Campbell, with art by Caitlin Yarsky, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Clayton Cowles, Rebecca Bonahan, assistant editor, Brittany Holzer, editor. Mary ends up on Themyscira after going to the Amazon embassy in Boston. She's looking for Wonder Woman to get some guidance, and there are some women on the beach fighting the undead, so she helps out. They all brag about the magic items they've got for some reason, like it's a D&D game, and then they laugh about Man's World thinking, and they sit around and validate each other for a while. Hoppy shows up to take Mary off to join in on Revenge of the Gods issue 2. This backup story was boring and stupid. The zombies looked okay, but the art looks very, very lazily drawn, especially the backgrounds. I didn't care for it at all. I thought it failed on all fronts. Aside from a couple of shots of zombies, the perspective shots weren't very good. The art looks really rushed. Again, this artist, like so many modern artists, can't seem to draw mouths, and the action scenes lacked any sort of dynamics. It was mostly just puffing each other up, validating each other, and a lot of pointless blather. This backup story has no place in this book whatsoever. The main story story was pretty well written, and I did like the art overall. There's a few panels that were a bit weak, but the artist understands perspective shots. I don't understand the talking squirrel thing, but I'm not a huge Wonder Woman fan. There was a little bit of the girl power stuff, which you'd kind of expect in a Wonder Woman book, unfortunately. But the story was pretty fast-paced, and there was a lot going on. So I actually didn't mind this. I thought this main story in this issue was actually probably better than issue 1 of Revenge of the Gods. So it looks like this miniseries is going to be a pretty mixed bag, with some mediocrity mixed in with actual good storytelling. But like I said, the primary story is pretty solid, and the art is pretty good. I think Diana's face looks a little weird at times, but overall I was pretty impressed with it. I expected this to be a lot worse, and I was a little worried. I paid a lot of money for all these books that were going to be total garbage, but that's what I get for being behind on my reading, I guess. There is a grammar error in here that I'm seeing more and more in DC Comics, and I guess the editors don't know that when you have a word ending in S, you only need an apostrophe and not an apostrophe S. I don't know why that is such a problem in comics these days, especially at DC, but it seems to be a lack of basic understanding of grammar. And the fact there are 3 listed editors, that should have been caught by somebody, because you have an assistant editor, an editor, and a group editor, and nobody caught that. What do you guys do for a living over there? Do you just kind of sit around, play on Twitter? Because that seems to be what you do. Of course, that error is in the backup stories, so I doubt anybody looked at it real closely. Overall, I would say this issue is a better installment than the first issue of Lazarus Planet, but you do need to read that one before this to make any sense of this storyline. So unfortunately, it's not a good jumping on point for new readers, and the backup story is total trash. So if you're looking to pick up this, I would say try and get it for less than $3. $5 is vastly overpriced, and it's probably going to end up in a dollar bin anyway. So you could always pick it up in trade paperback, but as usual, this is one of those cases where the trade is probably not going to be worth the cover price, so I would say get it cheap. The cover isn't bad, it's just a pose though. It doesn't really tell you anything about what's going on in the story. And really, goddess mode, like, we haven't overused the phraseology of video games enough in comic books, and it really doesn't tell you anything about the story or what's going on with Lazarus Planet, or the fact that you absolutely do need to read Revenge of the Gods before this issue. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, Issue 2. This is a mini-series from DC Comics in 2023. The main story is written by G. Willow Wilson, art by Cian Tormey and Manuela Lupacchino, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Pat Brousseau, cover by Gilliam March, edited by Brittany Holzer, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, group editor Paul Kaminsky. And the backup story, called The Plague, is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, with pencils by Alethea Martinez, inks by Mark Morales and John Livesley, colors by Alex Gamarez, letters by Becca Carey, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. This cover's garbage. What is going on with Captain Marvel there? Why does he have such a tiny waist and such a very thick neck? The proportions are all out of whack. That is hideous looking. He looks like a monster. I don't know what they were going for, but that's terrible. And Yara, I don't care about this character at all. I think the proportions look okay, except her waist looks really disproportionately skinny, and her hands look tiny. So I hate this cover. This is garbage. But we learn a little bit about what's going on with Billy Batson. He's trying to stop some giants on top of his school. Mary shows up, and he just runs away for some reason. He's got other stuff to do, I guess. And he has to go to Washington, D.C. because a ghost told him to. Seriously, it appears to be Hippolyta, but it's a little unclear because it's so poorly drawn. So he goes to Washington, D.C., where he meets a mysterious stranger on a bus. Meanwhile, Yara is out there chopping the head off of Hydra, and somebody says, I thought if you cut the head off of Hydra, 2 more grow in its place. And she says, 5-second rule. So I guess she's gonna eat it? Because the 5-second rule is if it's on the ground, you can pick it up and eat it. That doesn't apply here at all. Because they don't show her eating the heads or cauterizing the Hydra, so I don't know what rules of Hydra she's working with. I guess you can eat it if it's been on the ground for less than 5 5 seconds. So eventually the two meet up and decide to just storm into Olympus and try and beat everybody up for some reason, because plans, who needs those? That doesn't work. The wizard Shazam is up there, and he apparently has as many teeth as a jack-o'-lantern, making him look super creepy. And I guess he's evil now? I don't know. This was silly. But the end's a big twist, oh boy. And then the backup story, The Plague, will make zero sense if you haven't read Wonder Woman 797, because Hades is invading Themyscira for whatever reason, and the Amazons are trying to hold them at bay. It really isn't working too well. And then they go into talking about how they have an armory, which we know from Wonder Woman 797 was already plundered by this point, so I don't really know why that's such a big reveal. The backup story was better than the primary story. The art was more consistent. There's points in this where Captain Marvel looks like old school Captain Marvel Jr. Doesn't look at all like Captain Marvel. He looks like Freddie Freeman from the old days. He's just not buff at all. He just looks like a yoga instructor. I didn't care for that. I think the artist has talent. Perspective shots are pretty good, but it definitely needs refinement, and he doesn't seem to really know the characters that well. I didn't hate it. I just think the story was terrible, and the story couldn't be saved by the art, which I have enough problems with the art that it really doesn't look ready for prime time, and the characters don't really look that impressive. Plus, the story basically is Billy's an idiot, and everybody else has to tell him what to do, usually the women. The man who's supposed to be kind of a main character here is playing second fiddle to every female that comes along. It just wasn't really exciting at all. It was kind of boring. But the backup story wasn't bad. It does continue from where Wonder Woman 797 was, and that was moderately interesting. Is this worth $5 cover price? Oh god, no. Absolutely not. At best, this is dollar bin material. You absolutely need to read the Wonder Woman books to make sense of this, and 797 is critical to the backup story in this one, which is the good story, and it continues in 798 after this issue, so you're going to need to track those two down as well as this miniseries, plus the We Were Gods one-shot before this, for this to make any sense. So this isn't really a limited series. This is a disjointed storyline, a bad crossover. So we'll look at Wonder Woman 798 next, but I am really losing interest in this. This is very poorly written. It's sad when the backup story is better than the primary. There's a decent idea here, it's just very poorly executed. And I had a few problems with the art, which overall wasn't that bad, but it's dragged down by the bad storyline and the awful dialogue. So don't pay more than $1 or $2 for this. It is just not that good. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods Book 3. This is a 4-part miniseries from DC Comics, even though you actually need to read We Were Once Gods, one shot, and 2 issues of Wonder Woman in order for this to make any sense. So this issue was written by G. Willow Wilson with pencils by Emanuela Lupacchino and Cian Tormey, inks by Emanuel Lupacchino and Raul Fernandez, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Pat Brousseau, cover by Gilliam March, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer. Now this issue takes place before Wonder Woman 798 in the reading order, and that's very important because stuff that happens here directly impacts that issue, and that issue, if you read it first, will ruin a lot of the big reveals in this one, or as big as the reveals get in this story. So Wonder Woman gets really mopey for a minute because things are not really working out, and there's war and stuff. So Dr. Minerva comforts her and gives her a little self-esteem boost. Meanwhile, Billy is trapped in a cell, and his powers have been largely drained from him. Hecate and Yara show up to help out, and Yara is very condescending and says, well, she got a conscience, so she decided to help him. That's really nice of you, hero. They have to disguise Billy so they can try and sneak out, and they come across 2 of the other gods having some sort of spat, and that's Hermes and Aphrodite, but of course that has to become become silly for some reason. Hippolyta shows up for a minute to create a blessing on Billy and kind of returns some of his powers, I guess. That's really vague. Meanwhile, Apollo shows up in Washington, D.C. with a bunch of monsters to confront Wonder Woman and Cheetah. But don't worry, the battle is paused before it begins for like 3 pages so that Steve Trevor can come up and be like, hey, we're here, and some fat black lady and some dude with a sword who is not named at all. And then Captain Marvel and Yara show up as well. So then we can kind of get to battle because, you know, the bad guys just hang around and wait for everybody to get organized. That makes total sense. Why wouldn't they? I mean, hey, we're having a little reunion here where Wonder Woman's got to hug Steve for a couple panels. And then they start fighting, and we finally learn who Hoodie Guy is, and it's kind of predictable. Then we get to the backup story, which is written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, pencils by Alethea Martinez, inks by Mark Morales and John Livesley, colors by Alex Gamarez, letters by Becca Carey, Rebecca Bonahan, assistant editor, Brittany Holzer, editor, Paul Kaminsky, group editor. And this one is the Amazons on Themyscira fighting the undead, and Philippius goes to try and get Hippolyta's attention, and of course she's gonna offer up a sacrifice, but Hippolyta shows up so they can make out for a minute, and then we get some other gods introduced, and they all name themselves, but they're the patron gods of the Amazons, so Philippius should already know who they are. Maybe they should have put their names up instead of having them introduce themselves. They're called caption boxes, DC. Caption boxes which worked well in the first story because the editor actually gave us a caption box that referenced what they were babbling about. Overall, this issue was pretty incredibly boring. The storyline barely makes sense. There's a guy in here that's not even named. I have no idea who this character is because I don't read Wonder Woman, so that's really helpful. I don't know who Etta is. I don't know why this fat woman is running around on a field of battle when she's just a normal human. The gods act silly. The dialogue is atrocious. Some of the fight scenes look okay, but the art is pretty amateurish at times and looks really stiff, and people's proportions don't quite look right. First couple pages are the best, but later on as the issue goes, it looks more and more rushed. Colorists did a good job trying to mask things, but I really didn't find the art that inspiring. The backup story had better art, but that was also kind of a throwaway story that was just some nonsense I didn't care about. I'm really disappointed in this book. It had so much potential, and it's just kind of squandered. It really wants to be War of the Gods, but it doesn't have George Perez behind it. Instead, it has girl power, which wasn't really compensating very well. I would say get it for $1 out of a back issue box or a bargain bin. If you're paying more than that, I think you're going to feel a little ripped off. It's definitely not worth the $5 cover price. And the cover, well, the concept is good. The Wizard Shazam doesn't appear in here at all, and his muscles look bizarre. That's some 1990s Rob Liefeld level of weird looking. So I absolutely hated the cover. That would have put me off if I hadn't already bought the other issues. So it's a pretty big miss. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Wonder Woman, issue 798. This is a tie-in to Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods. And you will have to have read Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods 1 through 3 before getting to this issue, because it's going to make zero sense otherwise. So the reading order goes Revenge issue 1, Wonder Woman 797, then Revenge issues 2 and 3, then this issue. And the main story was written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, art by Amansi Nulapan, colors by Tamara Bonvillain, letters by Pat Brousseau, cover art by Yannick Paquette and Nathan Fairbairn. Assistant editor was Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer, group editor Paul Kaminsky. The concept of the cover is really good, but what is going on with Wonder Woman's face? That is weird looking. She looks like the witch from Grimm's Ghost Stories, if you're old enough to remember the Gold Key book. But otherwise, the concept is good, and the color schemes look really good. Colors do pop. pop. Unfortunately, the face just ruins the image. So we got a revelation of who is in the hoodie in Revenge of the Gods issue 3, and they just sort of half-heartedly do that again here. And Hera and some of the other gods show up to fight with our heroes, and there's a knockdown drag out between Wonder Woman and Hera, which is pretty well done, and the artist does a really good job of showing exactly how enraged Hera is and how determined Wonder Woman is. So I thought that was handled really well. Unfortunately, Wonder Woman is not doing well, and as has been revealed through multiple sources, this is not a gigantic spoiler. Mary Marvel gives the power of Shazam to Wonder Woman and sacrifices it from herself to help give Wonder Woman an advantage, which I guess is cheating technically because it was kind of a one-on-one and now the tides have turned a little bit. Steve Trevor has to get Mary out of there because now she's just kind of a regular mortal. That guy who's never named, who's got a sword, I don't know who this guy is. I don't think he's ever named in any of these books. He shows up for some reason or other, and some other goddess shows up to save Steve Trevor. Well, Mary Marvel throws a brick to save this fat black chick who I don't know who she is either. They're not really introduced. I know her name is Edda from Revenge of the Gods, but I don't think she's even named in this book. So we're left with a cliffhanger ending that looks like it's going to wrap up in Revenge of the Gods number 4. And then we get to the backup story. And this hideous disaster is written by Josie Campbell with art by Caitlin Yarsky, colors by Jordi Belair, and letters by Clayton Cowles. Assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer. And in the middle of all this strife and combat, Wonder Woman takes time out to talk to Mary Marvel and give her a little pep talk, tell her how great she is and what a marvel she is. Haha, get the play on words. And then she gives her some magic items that we saw in another issue, and she gives her Wonder Girl t-shirt that she autographed because that was necessary. I don't know why. And then Mary fights Typhon with what is effectively a 2-hit knockout, and this was just validation garbage. It was a lot of talking and a brief sequence of fighting. I don't know why there would be time to change your t-shirt in public to your autographed Wonder Woman shirt in public with a teenage girl. That's a little weird, but they had to get the validation in there and remind everybody that girl power is a real thing. That was really stupid. The backup story is poorly drawn garbage. The story makes little sense beyond validating Mary Marvel, which she doesn't need because she's already been a hero for a while, so she shouldn't need this kind of validation unless she's got some serious self-esteem issues, in which case she shouldn't be on a battlefield anyway because she's emotionally crippled. But we had to have that, and I don't know what the obsession is with magic items in this storyline, but there's a weird, unhealthy D&D obsession with magic items, and it really comes down to looking like those are MacGuffins that the writers are relying on as lazy crutches to try and tell a story. And after having read most of this crossover storyline, I'd have to say the Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods miniseries probably should have been written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, because these Wonder Woman issues are definitely better written than the actual miniseries they tie into. And I think the art's better too. The colorist did a really good job on here as well. But I was actually really impressed with this issue overall, except for the horrific backup story and that weird face on the cover. That thing is gonna haunt my nightmares for ages. So if you can find this, I would say get it out of a bargain bin for less than cover price, because the backup story really hurts it, and that weird creepy face on the cover is some nightmare fuel that will haunt you after you've read it. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods issue 4. This is the final installment of the storyline that began with a one-shot and crossed over into 2 issues of Wonder Woman, all of which you need to read for this storyline to make any amount of sense. So the primary story is written by G. Willow Wilson, pencils by Cian Tormey, inks by Raul Fernandez, and Wade Grawbadger, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Pat Brousseau, cover by Gilliam March. Assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, edited by Brittany Holzer, group editor Paul Kaminsky. This cover's probably the best one of the group, and it actually does relate to what's going on in the book, even though the shields aren't really in play. So I thought the cover actually did a pretty good job of selling the book. The interior art for the main story is pretty solid. There are a few panels that probably need a little bit of work, but overall not bad. Hera and Wonder Woman face off, and that is wrapped up within a few pages, mostly by Wonder Woman getting power from her friends standing around posing somehow. It's a little convoluted. After that, it just is epilogue. We find out that the hand belongs to Eros, which probably was explained in that one shot. I really don't remember anymore. And the demigods are going to be keeping the peace between the gods and the mortals. Even though the mortals really didn't stand much of a chance and didn't really contribute anything in this fight. And then Billy reveals his secret identity to Yara for some reason, and then asks her out and gets shot down. He's treated like a complete buffoon in this issue. And Wonder Woman has a little pep talk with Mary again. And Hera is treated like a cartoon villain. Then we go to the battle with Hades on Themyscira, where the patron goddesses have shown up to help out the Amazonians. And they have a little rah-rah moment where everybody gets rallied and Hades just sort of gives up and wanders off after a stern talking to, which is really weird. And this was written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad. Alethea Martinez penciler, Mark Morales and John Livesey were the inkers. Alex Gamarez was the colorist. Becca Carey letterer. Rebecca Bonahan assistant editor. Brittany Holzer editor. Paul Kaminsky group editor. The art in that one is pretty good. There's some really good coloring too. It was a lot of emotional validation from the gods to the Amazonians for some reason, and Nubia's hair is still ridiculous looking. Then we have the third storyline, which is Mary Marvel, and it's the finale of A Champion's Heart, written by Josie Campbell, with art by Caitlin Yarsky, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Clayton Cowles, assistant editor Rebecca Bonahan, Brittany Holzer editor, Paul Kaminsky group editor. And this one was Billy and Mary having a little heart-to-heart. He summons the wizard, and they're like, "Oh, we're not worthy. Give my powers to Mary because she's smarter than me, because I'm just a dumb boy." And the wizard's like, "I made a mistake because I thought people in power should handle power, and I'm dumb because I'm a boy." And then Hippolyta shows up and is like, "I'm going to give Mary superpowers based on goddesses' names. So now she can say Shazam based on girl power, and Billy could say it based on some scraggly looking homeless dude who wanders around in his underwear." This was a complete waste of time. The main story is wrapped up within like 4 or 5 pages, and the ending doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just sort of rushed. And that goes the same with the other 2 stories. Granted, the one with the Amazonians makes a little more sense and is a better written and drawn story. The third one, the art is atrocious. It looks incredibly amateurish, like an indie book about relationships would have, and the whole thing with Mary getting powers from the goddesses was just lazy and kind of cheap. They had to reach for it, and it was just more girl power nonsense. Overall, I was really disappointed with this miniseries. This issue is an afterthought. It's almost all epilogue, and it's definitely not worth anywhere near the cover price. This could have been wrapped up in the previous issue. Instead, they dragged it out one more issue so they could get more money and really beat on the drum of girl power because they wanted to do that for some reason. And the constant validation is distracting and boring and very 2016 comics, and it's never been a good seller. The writing is mostly garbage in here, and it's really disappointing. The one storyline that was pretty good, the Becky Cloonan storyline from the Wonder Woman books, was pretty solid, but even that wasn't great comic storytelling. It wasn't even that good of storytelling. It was just the best of them. So I wouldn't have a problem paying $2 or $3 for the Wonder Woman issues, but the rest of these were dollar bin material across the board. This as a payoff just fell flat on its face. It was not dynamic. It was not exciting. It felt like sitting in a college lecture hall for a class I didn't want to sign up for, that I was trying really hard not to sleep through. So I'm not going to recommend it. If you want to know what happened with Mary Marvel's powers, now you know. That's all you really needed to read this for. It was a complete waste of time and money. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.